How to turn your stress into success by being a warrior rather than a warrior. Yes, in this crazy, noisy, connected world today, which is full of, unfortunately, full of anxiety and stress and depression and suicide and mental health challenges, it seems to overwhelm a lot of people in the world today, the thing called stress. So how to get on top of it and you be the master of it rather than the victim of it. And that is today's topic. It's going to help you combat, but not necessarily combat, because stress is something that you're not supposed to combat. It's something that you're supposed to use to your advantage, to be able to direct it and channel it towards the solution rather than feeding the problem, whatever that problem is. So if there is an enemy and you want to call it your enemy, then if you want to defeat the enemy, you have to understand the enemy. And if you can turn the enemy to be back on your side, then you've got double your side. How cool is that? So I'm going to go through what stress is, the history of stress, the physiology of stress, the different types of stress, and give you some tools on how to overcome it in the acute stress, medium stress, and long-term chronic stress to make your life happier and less stressful, because really that's really the purpose of life, is to enjoy life and to be happy rather than being miserable and stressed out. Because a lot of time people look at stress and they see it's a bad thing. Stress is normally related to bad things. Oh, I'm so stressed, I'm stressed out, rather than, yes, I'm going to use that pressure that's going to turn me from coal into a diamond if I apply the pressure in the right way and use it the right way rather than use it against me, learning how to use it for you. So let's have a look at stress. And historically, stress, first of all, it's a reaction or a response, a physiological response that we all have. So first of all, it's generic. Everyone gets stressed out. It depends on what they do with it and how to handle it that makes us different. So I want to help you to be into the difference where you're going to use it to your advantage rather than your disadvantage. So first of all, stress, if you go back to hunter and gatherer days, that stress response or that stress reaction is really vital for our survival. And the obvious is the fight and flight principle. Now, I also have another principle called fight, flight and freeze. Flight is where you flight, run away. Fight is where you stand and fight. And freeze is when you freak out and just freeze up. Now, let's have a look at each one of them. Now, historically, if we go back to hunter and gatherer days, where the hunter is out or the gatherer is there, and all of a sudden they came across a predator, might be a lion, or it might be an elephant attacking them, or a cheetah. Back in those days, it might be animals, it might be the tribe down the valley who comes and attacks you. It could be anything which is very confrontational, which is life and death, that could threaten to harm you. So when you're under threat, and then your body will react. It's called the sympathetic nervous system. Means it's designed to react and respond automatically to help us survive. And that gives the physiological response where we energize the body and activate the body and prepare the body physiologically, neurologically, muscular-wise, hormonal-wise. And we're going to discuss this later. And it gets the body ready and fired up, so I have all this extra energy so I can either fight the lion and give me energy and strength and courage to defeat the lion, or flight means I run from the lion and get away. So that energy will be used for fighting or flighting, to make me run faster, climb a tree faster, be stronger in getting away. Now, back in those days, which were many years ago, if I chose to flight, or if I chose to fight the lion and I defeated the lion, then in the process of fighting the lion, I burnt all that energy off. I'd use all the hormones and the neural drive. I used it all up and I fought the lion and I victory, and I put my foot on the lion with my spear. I go, yes, conqueror, Chief Kman, yes, Captain Kman. And I got that victory and I got that great feeling of success. Dopamine was released in my body, means of achievement, and I felt satisfied and I survived. And all that extra energy, all the substrates and all the drive, all the neural drive, all the muscle, it all was released. So that stress was released from my body in the process of fighting, defeating the lion. Now on the other hand, therefore the stress went away. I was no longer stressed. On the other hand, if the lion killed me, again, no more stress. Either way, the stress was gone. Dead or champion victory. If I chose to flight from the lion, I ran and I was burning off energy. I'm burning off all that energy that's been released. I'm using the muscles that have been activated. I'm using the neural drive, the nervous system, the hormones to run. I climb up the tree and I get up the tree and the lion can't get me, and I'm up there and the lion goes, well, I can't get you, so the lion goes away because lions aren't the best at climbing high trees. Or I jump into the lake or the river, or I climb up a cliff, whatever it might be, and the lion goes away and I go, yes, victory! I outran the lion, I outsmarted the lion. Yes, I am the champion of evasion, and in that process I burnt off all the energy and I felt, yes, lion, you're too slow, see you tomorrow. And again, that stress was physiologically or physically relieved from my body in the process of flighting the lion. So that's the flight principle, and the lion didn't catch me. So in those days, that acute stress is short term, that was the stress that I experienced as a hunter. Also, if I'm hunting a gazelle, I get stressed because I'm hungry and I have to feed my family, and I'm stalking and the gazelle runs and I run, and I'm stressed in a way that I'm giving me energy to chase the gazelle with my spear. It gives me energy to throw my spear more powerfully and accurately. So the stress there was used into hunting to get me food. And that gazelle was fast. And that's back in those days, that was the definition of fast food. Fast gazelles and rabbits. Fast food is a very different meaning today. So I'm stressed again in that hunting where I'm the hunter and I'm chasing the gazelle. It's like the saying when the lion's chasing the gazelle. Right? The lion's chasing the gazelle. They're both stressed out. The lion is stressed because it needs food to survive. The gazelle is stressed because it's trying to survive by running. Both are stressed. Both are experiencing the same types of stress. It's the same generic physiological response. The only difference is one of them doesn't want to be there and the other one does want to be there. And many times that's the same in life. If stress happens to one person, they don't want to be there. That same stress happens to another person, they do want to be there, because that stress they really enjoy and they use that stress. For example, in this day and age, we don't have the stress of lions attacking us, but sometimes we may get physically bullied or confronted in a pub or bullied at school, and you're still going to get that same stress release. Either you're the gazelle or you're the lion. Ideally in life, you want to make yourself the lion. It's a lot more fun because you want to be there. I'm not saying being the bully, but I'm seeing the person who actually is controlling the stress and actually directing in their benefit, not at the compromise of other people naturally. Back in the hunting the other days, there wasn't just the acute stress. They still also, like us today, suffered from that underlying chronic stress. And that chronic stress might be the mother who's concerned about their sick child. You know, the child is sick and they're worried that if their child is going to survive the sickness. Or the hunter's worried because in the winter the snow came in and there's a famine, and he's worried that can he provide for his family. So he's sitting by the campfire, worried, hope I catch that gazelle tomorrow because my children are hungry and my partner and my family are hungry. So they still suffered from, it wasn't just hunter-gatherer, fight-flight, they still had that underlying chronic stress. If the hunter did go away and hunt and they didn't return because they got eaten by the lion or got lost or captured by the local tribe who were their enemy, then the mums at home or the partners at home worried that where's my husband? He hasn't come back. It's been weeks, it's been months, it's been years. So they also experienced that underlying chronic stress, which we'll talk more about. So yes, stress, we keep using the fight-flight principle, but it's also not just in that point, because you also get stressed in that chronic stress of worry about certain situations, whether infidelities happen back then as they do today. Today we get stressed about many different things, because life is different. We might be stressing because we're being bullied on Facebook, or we might be stressed because I'm financially strained and I can't pay my bills. I'm stressed because I'm going through a divorce. I might be going through business challenges. I might be having challenges in my sport, in my recreation, in my life, in my family, in my finances, in all those areas. So stress today is more physically confrontational, even though it can be. And it's more attached to lifestyle and the stresses that we get in lifestyle. And yeah, some stresses will affect other people. Like you can have 10 people exposed to the same stress, and 2 will go completely into being a victim. Others might be worried, and about 2 will go, yeah, this is fantastic. It's like if I was brought up on the beach on the Gold Coast where there's lots of waves, and sometimes the waves are small and sometimes the waves are huge. If the waves are huge, for someone who can't swim, who's find themselves in the ocean amongst those massive waves and they can't swim, then they'll go through a stressful feeling of panic, of survival, of drowning, and they'll be freaking out. On the other hand, a trained surfer would be out there and going, yes, they'll have exhilaration and excitement because they can't wait to surf those massive waves because they get joy out of the waves of surfing, where someone who can't swim will be panicking and fear for their life. So the same stressor, because in life we have stresses and stressors. Now the stresses are the things that stimulate the stress response, and we all get that stress response, and we all have different adherence levels or thresholds of what will stress me out, may be different to what stress someone else is out, depending on how it threatens me and how prepared I am. And today's sessions is about, yes, many times you can't control life stresses. It just seems to happen, whether it be the weather or the storm or the neighbour, or your partner playing up on you or leaving you, or you lose your job, or you're going to be evicted out of your house, or you can't pay that bill, or you have exams, or you have a presentation, a speech coming up that you have to perform at. So they're all the life pressures of today, and we all experience the same physiological response. But it's important to understand it's not what happens to you that's important, it's what you do about it. And what you do about it, you can prepare for. I know if I have dogs, as you know, I have 4 dogs, and I love dogs, and I've always had lots of dogs around me. And some people are fearful of dogs. You know, if you're walking down the road and you're fearful of dogs, and a dog gets loose, might be a pit bull or a Rottweiler or a German Shepherd or something big and looks threatening. It doesn't mean it is threatening, but it looks threatening, and they come running towards someone who's afraid of dogs. They're going to be freaking out. They won't be fighting. They'll be flighting or freezing. Because freezing is where you panic and you can't move. You just and you just freeze. And you don't know what to do. And that's freezing. So you still get that same stressor response, but instead of fighting or flighting, you freeze. Now sometimes that response can be conditioned. You can condition yourself to fight, flight or freeze, and we're going to talk about that. So someone who's not accustomed to dogs is going to be scared of dogs. However, if it's someone like myself, or if it's a dog trainer who's very familiar with dogs and grew up with dogs, and the dog comes running, then they're not going to be freezing. They're not going to be flighting. They're going to be more confronting, not fighting maybe, but confronting it because they know they're well trained. So knowledge and experience and training can have a large effect on how you deal with any circumstance. As you probably know, I'm a fighter. I'm a martial artist and I compete. I used to be a professional kickboxer. I used to fight full contact kickboxing. I've done judo and karate and taekwondo. So a lot of those are physical confrontations. And hopping in a ring or going into a tournament with someone who's standing across the ring who really wants to hurt you and hit you, and some people would find that very confronting, and they'll be panicking, they'll be shaking, they'll be freezing, they'll be flighting, they'll be nervous, they'll be stressed out. On the other hand, someone like myself, I'm not necessarily going to be stressed out because I've been fighting since I was 10 years of age, and I'm very familiar with that, and I'm skilled at that, and I know that the chances of being hurt are very similar, very small, but I'm well trained in that area. But you can actually condition yourself to become that in different areas of your life, whether it be financial or whether it be in relationships or whether it be in your sport or what. And that's what we're going to be addressing today, is some of the things you can do in the moment, to relieve the stress and to be able to use the stress, direct the stress, control the stress to your advantage. And also some of the things you can do in the medium term. Because acute stress is something that happens within the moment or within a day or so, so it's short term. Then that's acute stress. Then you have the medium term stress, which may go up to a week or a couple of weeks. For example, Immediate stress is when you're walking into an exam. You're stressed out because you have to pass the exam to go to university. Medium stress might be you've got 2, 3, 4 weeks of exams, so now you've got this whole term where you've got this control, this stress all the way throughout. Then you have chronic long-term stress, and that's going to go into the months, and that's where you worry about. You might be worried about your future, you're worried about your relationship, you're worried about your health, and that goes over a period of time. So we're going to address each one of them, but first of all, let's have a look and seek to understand what stress is from a physiological and a biological point of view. So as I shared before, stress is generic, means you get stresses and the stress that we physiologically experience. And the stresses can present themselves in physical confrontations. It could be a bill that we get which you can't pay. It might be finding out that your partner's been playing up on you. It might be that you're going to get fired. It might be you're going to have to go on stage and speak publicly, because public speaking is one of the feared things that people have in life. It's up there, the public speaking, and so you're just stressed out. So whatever the stressor is, whether it be a line, a bill, a divorce letters, whether it be whatever it might be, whatever the stressor is, because it doesn't matter. Because stress is an internal reaction to an external action. So the internal reaction is always going to be pretty much the same to the external action. And yes, you can condition your view of the external action, and that will help you control the internal reaction. But if you get this stressor placed upon you and you get a stress response or a stress reaction, it's automatic. It's generic, and it happens within milliseconds. It comes, it presents, and bam, you go, oh my gosh, and you can't control it. It just is released. Now what you can do is you may be able to direct it, but you can't control that release. So I've been fighting all my life, and people say, you don't seem to get stressed. And I said, well, I do, but I use it and I direct it and I control it. So from the outside, I don't look stressed, but from the inside, yes, I'm still nervous and I'm still anxious about going into a competition fight or whatever it might be. So that response or that reaction occurs from a bunch of neurons called your sympathetic chain ganglion, and they're basically down here in the front from your chest going down, and that's why you may feel that kick in the guts, or that you feel butterflies in the belly, or you feel nauseous, because it's a release of an activation of the neurons from that sympathetic chain ganglion. And what that basically does, it releases acetylcholine, which is a biochemical, and that basically in turn releases or triggers or activates the release of adrenaline and epinephrine, which is the hormones that are pretty much action hormones. So basically what it all does is it tells your body it wants to move. It wants to move and talk. It wants to do something. It activates. Now, the acetylcholine is normally related to muscle contraction. We talk about this in the program, about the neural drive, the nerve impulse hits the motor end plate, and that stimulates the release of a biochemical or chemical called acetylcholine that goes across the neural synapse and into the muscle and causes muscle contraction. But it's also related to in releasing adrenaline, and that adrenaline or epinephrine will do one or two things in the body. And under the stress response, it will constrict some areas and it will open other areas. So it will dilate some areas and constrict some areas. It will activate some areas and deactivate other areas. So what it will activate and stimulate are the systems in the body that are responsive or are needed for physical response, whether it be fight, flight. So it will activate the things that you need for action, such as the muscular system, or activate the muscular system, dilates the vessels in the muscular system, opens up the neural drive to the muscular system, the neural system, the nervous system, the hormonal system, the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, because they're all the systems of energy that causes fight, and it gives you energy for fight and flight. On the other hand, it will deactivate or constrict other systems that are not needed during the fighting process or the flighting process, such as the reproductive system. You know, so your reproductive system will close down, it will be constricted, and you probably, you know, you won't, your libido will go out the window. You're not thinking, oh my gosh, I'm really horny at the moment, as you go into a fight or a confrontation, or you're stressed under, and that's why when you get stressed, your libido goes away, because you're stressed and that system has been shut down due to that constant release of adrenaline or epinephrine that's actually shutting down your reproductive system, so your libido goes. Also, your digestive system will close down there. It's closed down as well, and that's why you feel, you know, I feel in the guts, I feel sick in the guts, I've got butterflies in the belly, I've got gastrointestinal pain, I've got challenges, you get diarrhea, because all that basically is doing is it's shutting that system down, and that's why sometimes, you know, you need to, when you go to the toilet, you get diarrhea, people say you shit yourself, right? Yeah, I literally shit myself, because that's the system saying, I don't need energy in that system. I need the energy in the systems that's responsible for fight and flight, in the muscles, in the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, not in the systems that I don't need. I don't need to go and sit down and have a feast. And that's why you may feel nauseous, or you may feel sick. You may throw up before an event. I know if anyone who understands rugby league, there's one of the great rugby league players guy called Alan Langer, and I use him because he was very open about it, and he was one of the great all-time rugby league halfbacks. Played State of Origin in Australia, and a bloody legend basically. However, it was known before every game he played, he used to go into the toilet and throw up before the game, because that was his body preparing for fight and flight, shutting down the systems that he didn't need, and opening up the systems that he did need. So he didn't need food in his belly, he needed energy in his muscles. So his body says, hey, get rid of the food, whoop, get rid of the food, whoop, at the back, at the front, at the back. Now we've emptied, now we can go to combat and play the sport, or it might be. So that's basically what happens. You don't have control of it. Everyone, all of us feel that same feeling. It's just what you do about it. Do you flight, do you fight, or do you freeze? And I'm going to show you how to fight. And sometimes you have to fight too, don't get me wrong, but freezing is not a good option, because then you're a stationary target for the stress. So all these systems, and let's have a look at the systems that get activated and what actually happens, so you can understand what's happening to the body. Because if you understand what's happening to the body, then you can do something about it. So let's have a look at the systems. I've already talked about the endocrine system, or the hormonal system, meaning what you get is a release of epinephrine and adrenaline. And they are hormones that make you want to move, make you want to talk, want to make you, get you moving, get you into action, because you really have to get into action quickly. And this happens pretty instantly. It doesn't take very long whatsoever. Other hormones that will be associated with this would be cortisol. Body will release cortisol. Now cortisol is a catabolic hormone, means it breaks things apart and opens things up. So what you need to do is you need to open up the cells in your body to release the energy from the cells, to get them into the bloodstream, to get into the working muscles, so you can break that energy down and produce energy for fighting or physical confrontation, or fighting or flighting. So cortisol is a hormone that's an action hormone that gets your body, opens up the petrol tanks, basically, the energy tanks, gets them in where they're supposed to be, and makes them available so you can use that energy for muscular contraction and neural drive and so on. So yes, you are going to get a reaction within the hormonal system, the endocrine system, epinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol. You also, in turn, because that energy is released from the cells of the body, you have to transport that around the body. You have to get it from the cells into the working muscles, and that's done via the cardiovascular system, which is your heart and all your blood vessels. So your heart will start to pump. You get a release of hormones instantly. We know that. Instantly release of hormones. All of a sudden, your heart rate will start to increase. Why? Because it needs to pump that blood around the body to get the macronutrients, carbohydrate, protein, fats, from the cells into the blood to the working muscles. It also will need to also transport the hormones, because hormones are transported via the cardiovascular systems as well. And you may need some enzymes and some to there to speed up those metabolic processes as well. So your cardiovascular system amps up. So you get an increase in heart rate, naturally get an increase in blood pressure, you get a vasodilation of all your blood vessels, means they open up to get more blood through. Then, obviously, once that energy is to the working muscles or the cells of the body to produce the energy, like a fire burning wood, you need oxygen with the fire to burn the wood. So the body has to get oxygen down to the fires, the cells of the body, the muscle cells of the body to produce the energy. So what happens now, you get, and this all happens pretty instantly, and your respiratory system kicks in. So all of a sudden you start to breathe and you try to get more oxygen into the lungs, into the blood, down to the cells of the body. And in the process of battle and fighting, you also get a byproduct of carbon dioxide that is released from the byproduct of producing energy in the cells of the body, the muscle cells of the body. So the body has to get rid of the carbon dioxide. So your breathing rate increases, your depth of breathing goes up, and you're trying to breathe that out. And that's why sometimes when you're really, really stressed and you're not really in control of anything, you start to your breathing's going up, you can't control it, and that's where you're in that, what I call the freeze state. The freeze state is that you're not control of it, your body is control of you, you're basically not control of your systems. And we're going to go through some triggers that's going to help you get in control of your systems to control the stress reaction. So your respiratory rate goes up, your breathing rate goes up, your lungs dilate, they all open up to get oxygen down to the little cells, the little sacs in the lungs, the alveoli. We'll talk about ways to use breathing to be very beneficial in preparation for stress or during the stress and after the stress. So respiratory system gets fired up, and obviously all this occurs, you get the muscles start to tense up because the muscles are the engines of the body. So all of a sudden your muscles increases your oxygen supply to the muscles, your hemoglobin, your myoglobin in the muscles, they start to tense up, they start to twitch, and you start to twitter, and all of a sudden you're moving around. If someone's stressed, they're always moving around like this, they're normally not sitting in the corner doing this, they're nervous. So that's all the muscles getting prepared for flight or flight. But again, if you stay in the free state, you sit there and you just go into this toxic, what I call a toxic state. And then obviously you have all your neural drive, your muscles have been activated by the nervous system. So your nervous system is firing up, it shuts down the activation to the organs that you don't need, such as your digestive organs, your reproductive organs. That's why sometimes you get thirsty, because you don't need to eat, you don't need salivation, so you get thirsty when you're stressed because your digestive system is all closing down, your reproductive system is closing down, and you don't want to go and, hey baby, let's make love. You don't want to do that when you're in that stress state, because that's all shutting down. Nervous system, respiratory system, cardiovascular system, muscular system, endocrine system, all of them are fired up. And even a lot of people don't understand is your immune system fires up as well. And people say, why does the immune system fire up? Well, because you're going to go into battle, the body also has to be prepared to fight off viruses and bacteria. Now, sometimes stress could be disease. You get disease, you get ill, you get sick, and now you're stressed. So now you're stressed because you're sick, you're unhealthy, you're diseased, and that stress on the body stimulates the immune system to release all your killer cells, from different organs of your body, particularly the spleen, and those killer cells go out there to fight the bacteria and to fight the intruders and fight the virus. So stress is a good thing for your immune system, and it's good if you control it rather than it control you. But on the other hand, if we go back to the fighter or the fight-flight principle, if I'm fighting the lion or a grizzly bear, even if I win the fight, I'm still going to come out scathed. I'm not going to come out unscathed. So I'm going to have cuts and line bites and a bit of blood here and so on. So the immune system is going to be activated because it knows it's going into a confrontation, a physical confrontation, whether it be against a lion or virus or bacteria, or illness or sickness or disease. Therefore it stimulates the immune system to release the killer cells, prepare for any intruders that come into battle during that process of the stress confrontation or the stress battle. So stress in itself is very good for the immune system in the right dosages. Otherwise, the immune system can actually shut down and you actually will become sicker. So stress is a good thing. Everyone talks about stress as a bad thing, but it is a good thing if you use all that energy and if you direct that energy and channel the energy towards the solution, not churn about the problem. You know, attack the problem, not the person. Because a lot of people get their biggest stress is other people, right? And they whinge and they complain and they bitch and they moan and they get on the Facebook and they cancel culture them, and that's stress. And what everyone's doing is with their stress, they're attacking the person, they're attacking the people. Rather than someone who's responsible and mature and sophisticated and classy and educated and full of wisdom, they're not going to be attacking people, they're going to be attacking the problem, not the person or the people. So my goal for you is to be that classy, sophisticated, mature, respectful person who uses all that stress, all that energy, and uses it responsibly to attack the problem, to find the solution, to improve their lives and other people's lives as well. So let's look at what you can do about it. We know what happens to your body. Let's have a look at the different types of stress that you will experience, and then what you can do about it to use that stress, use that pressure, and turn coal into diamonds, turn stress into success by being the warrior, not the warrior. The first thing to do is to welcome stress, because stress will make you better. The point of stress, it prepares you for performance. So under pressure, you can get your best performance, whether it be in sport, whether it be in a business proposal, whether it be in a relationship, whatever it might be. If you use it well, it can make you better. It will improve your performance. So when it comes, take responsibility for it. Expect it. It's going to be there. When it does come down your path, go, oh, here you are. I've been expecting you. How good is that? If you're going into, if it's an unexpected stress, it might be a letter in the mail or an abuse on Facebook, or something happens, then you go, oh, there you are. I've been expecting you, that angry person that I seem to come across every single day, there you are. Or whether it be a pre-planned stress where you're actually going into a presentation that you are prepared for, or an exam that you're going into, or a sporting event, then expect it. And use it, and be familiar with it, and take ownership of it, and then direct it for your own benefit. So stress, again, is a thing that will make you better. However, like any weapon, it can be used against you as well. You can use the weapon for you, or you can use it against you. So let's have a look at the different types of stress that you're going to experience and how you can deal with those stresses. Now, the first stress is what I call acute stress. Now, I'm not saying it's a good-looking stress. It might be. Acute stress is something that doesn't last a very long period of time. It might be for a short term, might be sitting an exam. It might be going into a sporting game, like a football game. It might be having an argument with your partner, or your partner says, we need to talk. And all of a sudden you go, you know what that means? I know, we need to talk. Then you start to stress out a little bit about that. So the first thing is that important to understand is that this too shall pass. Knowing that everything will pass by. You know, there's a great saying that I heard from Anthony Robbins, and he says, you know, one day we're going to look back on this and we're going to laugh. So how about we save time and laugh now? See, that's just a good philosophical approach in dealing with not just stress, but just in life itself. So your philosophy in life is going to determine how you deal with the things that get thrown to you at life, whether it be in the short term, acute stresses, or long term, more chronic stresses. So when a stress comes and you feel that, the acetylcholine, the adrenaline, the epinephrine, the muscle tension, the breathing, the heart rate, the palpitations, and understanding is that it's really important that when your body gets into this activated state, you have to be able to relieve it. Now, sometimes the fight and the flight used to relieve it for us when we were in hunter-gatherer days. But if I freeze and do nothing about it, I'm not relieving this imbalanced state in my body. My body is no longer in homeostasis, means it's no longer in a balanced state. It's a very imbalanced state, hormonally, muscular, cardiovascular, every way, substrates, we're completely in imbalance. So I've got increased blood fats, I've got increased blood sugars because I need that energy sent to the muscles to be used. But if I don't use that energy, then I'm left in this state where I've got all these free fatty acids floating around the blood, all these glucose cells floating, molecules floating around the blood. I've got all this muscle tension, the neural drives is happening, I'm twitching, my heart rate's up, my heart's pumping, my vessels are vasodilating in some areas, vasoconstricting in other areas, and I have this not a comfortable state, what people call a stress state. So if I stay in that state and I don't do anything about it, I freeze and I don't take responsibility, I don't relieve it in some way, then I'm no longer at ease. I'm no longer at ease. I'm now diseased. And that's where disease comes from. Basically means your body is no longer in balance. It's no longer in a healthy state. It's imbalanced. It's diseased. And if I stay in that state for long periods of time, they're going to start to experience the chronic effects or the byproducts of that, and they're not positive ones. So because my blood pressure's up and my heart beating, I'm going to start to, over time, start to experience high blood pressure, maybe become more chronic. I'll get more blood flats floating around, so atherosclerosis or clogging of the arteries. The glucose are floating around the body, and because glucose molecules are large molecules, they cause a lot of deterioration in the inner lining of the blood vessels. They cause deterioration, and then they can create cracks where cholesterol can clog in there, and you start to form atherosclerosis and high blood pressure and coronary heart disease. That could down the track lead to diabetes, and obviously because it's such an imbalanced state, my immune system is shutting down, therefore the invaders and the bacteria and the viruses, and I can go down the track and all of a sudden I become toxic, and then I can get more cancer. We talk about people, you know, they become cancerous, they become toxic because they're always stressed out. I get muscle tightness. That's when you go and get a massage. You go, oh, that's sawing through the traps. Why? Because that's a hunting muscle. That's the base stabilizing the pelvis, or that's not the pelvis, the scapula for hunting and fighting. And I get tight in the hamstrings and the glutes because that's an action muscle of running. So all the action muscles tighten up, and I feel that and experience that when I start to get massages, for example. So coronary heart disease, which is the biggest killer in the world today, diabetes, atherosclerosis, high blood pressure, which are all coronary heart disease, certain cancers, disease, and all sorts of things. So if you stay in that chronic imbalanced state, in that disease state, then you're going to be open. The cracks are going to open to physical diseases, not to mention the mental health challenges where your hormones are imbalanced, you become depressed, you become suicidal, you become down and under, you have no energy and all sorts of stuff. So it's important that when you go into this acute stages, then you have some ways to relieve it. Now there's many ways to do that. Obviously one of the best is, because these are all physiological changes, preparing us for a physiological response. You know, back in the day, hunting and gather, there was a physical response. I could fight the lion, da 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 da, or I could run away, da 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 da, and I go, whew, and that relieved the system. But this day and age, we can't always do that. I'm not going to, if someone's sort of upsetting me, I don't beat them to the pulp. Some people do, but they end up in jail, and that's a different stress altogether when they meet Bubba. Or sometimes you just can't just run away. You can't run away from the law. You can't run away from your responsibilities. So that in this day and age, where a lot of the reactions or the responses to the stresses aren't physical, then we have to create our own physical reaction or response to it. So first thing, rather than reacting to it, and I know they're pretty much the same thing, but it's the context that I'm going to share with you. You can either react to something or respond to it. So reacting to something, if I say, for example, I came back from the doctor and I went to the doctor and I had a bit of a rash. I'm not going to say where, but wherever it might be, and the doctor says, hey, use this cream, they'll get you the rash. And I come back to the doctor the week after and say, there's the rash. And the doctor says, hey, the rash has reacted to the cream. That's probably not a positive thing. It means it's probably inflamed it and made it worse. But if he says, hey, the rash has responded to the cream, that means it's probably a good thing. It means it's come down, it's deflamed and so on. So just a psychological change. Do you react to it? Means you bite out, or do you respond with responsibility? It means responding with your ability. And that's where knowledge is really important. And if you're watching this, you're gaining knowledge to know how to respond to a stressor, not react to the stressor. Reacting is, I bite their head off, I get angry, I hit the bottle, I start to punch the wall, I start to yell abuse, I start to I'll show you, and they become that keyboard warrior. That's all reacting in the spur of the moment. You say something that you're going to regret. Because one of the other things is that when you get stressed and that release, you get obviously everything tightens up, and you're more likely to just say something that you regret. And we're going to go through some exercises that's going to help you avoid that situation. So first of all, when the stressor comes, welcome and go, here it is. Now, just think to yourself, am I going to respond or react to this? So I'm going to go through in the short term, in the moment, and then I'm going to talk about some things that you can expand out from that. So in the moment, there's some great stuff shared about this with a guy called Dr. Uberman, who's from Stanford University and is a neuroscientist, and he has his own podcast. I'd recommend you tune into that because he obviously practices what he preaches. He's fit, he's healthy and strong. He's one of the world leading scientists in this area, and he talks about stress and sleep and emotions and all sorts of stuff, which is all the big things that really affect us these days. So look him up on YouTube, and some of this stuff comes from his podcast. So thank you, sir. But one of the things you can do is that you can't control your sympathetic system because it's automatic, but you can use a parasympathetic system to control it. Like I can't control my organs, I can't control my liver, I can't control my spleen, I can't control my pancreas, I can't control those things. But let's have a look at some of the things I can control that's going to have an effect on those things, for example. Now, one of the things which you can do is using your breathing. And I used to do this. I do this in fighting. And it was just a thing which I learned. No one actually taught it to me, but I've learned of how to prepare for a fight, how to prepare the morning throughout the day leading into the fight. And it's interesting when I go through some of this stuff, and when I learnt this stuff, I said, that's what I do. And that's what I do in my karate class. And that's what I do when I compete in a kickboxing event or a judo event or my competition. So first of all, when people get stressed, they tend to hyperventilate, they tend to take shallow breaths in, and you can see their breathing's all over the place. So here's a couple of things that you can do by controlling your breathing and controlling your diaphragm, because you can control your diaphragm. And your diaphragm has an indirect effect on your heart rate and your cardiovascular system. So here's a nice simple thing. First of all, if you want to de-stress, and we talk about that, is sometimes when people are stressed out, you can say, hey, don't stress, chill out, don't stress. But that's not going to make it better at all, because just saying don't stress means you're going to stress more. If I say to you, don't think of a pink elephant, don't think of a pink elephant, then right now you're thinking of a pink elephant, because the body or the mind doesn't understand the word don't. This kind of, if I go into Google and I say, don't show me pink elephants, and then all of a sudden pink elephants will come up. And that's your mind and how it operates. It retrieves what you say, doesn't understand the opposite, meaning don't. So be careful not to tell people what not to do. You're better off telling them what to do rather than what not to do. If my father said to me when I was young, don't look in the cupboard. Guess what I want to look into? I want to look into the cupboard now, and I'm stressing out now because I want to know what's in the cupboard. That's created a new stress. So eventually I'm going to look in the cupboard, and there will be a surprise for me, I'm sure. Him there with a stick. So let's have a look at breathing. So rather, don't tell people not to stress. Don't tell them to chill out. You have to give them some physical tool that they can use, which I used to use in my fighting career. Now, we breathe, and that's one of the great things you can control. You control your breathing. So if you want to, for example, de-stress, then in a nutshell, make sure you breathe out more than you breathe in. So if I'm at a tournament, a fight tournament, or any stressful situation, going into a meeting, going into a confrontation, what I naturally do is I breathe in through my nose, and I do a long breath out. In, breathe out. Breathe in peace, breathe out stress. Now, that's a good mindset to think about. A bit airy-fairy, understand that. But I can actually do that. If I'm there and everyone's around me freaking out, I would just... Now, whether you're into your nose or out your mouth, either way, it doesn't matter. You pick what's best for you. But there's a couple of things that does. First of all, if I take a big breath in, what that basically does is that drops my diaphragm and because my heart's in that cavity, my heart opens up and becomes a little bit bigger. And because it becomes bigger, the blood flow going through the heart, there's a bit more space, so the flow decreases. Now, the sonoatrial node, which is a receptor in the heart, says, hey, the blood flows come down, the blood pressures come down, hey, we need to bring it up. So we always do the opposite. So those send a message to the brain to increase your heart rate. So if I want to get prepared for a fight and increase the heart rate and get better, I breathe in. Yes, I breathe in. Big breath in. Small breath out, because that will raise my heart rate, increase the stressor response to get me ready for battle. But if I want to do the opposite, I make my breaths out longer than my breaths in. So I breathe in, and what that does is that brings the diaphragm up, it compresses a bit on the heart, makes the heart a little bit smaller, causes a bit more pressure, less blood flow, more blood flow, like a hose when you tighten it, and the pressure, and it goes through. And then that sends the sonoatrial node to send a message to the brain, says, hey, there's too much pressure, the heart rate's too up. So it would tell the heart to slow down. So if I want the heart to slow down, to calm down, and decrease my blood flow, decrease my heart rate, then I take my breaths out bigger than my breaths in. Now, I always say about twice as long out than in. And I used to naturally do it anyway. And I used to do it quietly because my wife, Rory, she says, yeah, you're amazing because I see you go into these fights and you come across as fearless. You're not nervous, you're not anything. And it's not that I'm not experiencing those same physical reactions or responses in the body. I just naturally use a breathing technique, and I didn't even know I was doing it until I listened to Dr. Uberman talk about it. And that's how I deal with a lot of stress. If I'm dealing with someone who wants to argue with me, then I would just keep a calm face. I wouldn't open my mouth, and I'd just slowly, subtly breathe out. And that seems to have this calming effect. Bring my heart rate down, the tension down, the muscle tension down, and I just dissipate the stress that way. Now, another technique that Dr. Uman talks about is the double breath in, which is so you've got 2 breaths in, double up, 1 long breath out. Now, it's really interesting because I also do karate, and we do that in karate in a technique where we go, after we do some karate, and then we want to calm down after the agitation of, and we go. If you look at that, the breath out is long, the breath in is double, and the out breath is twice as long as the in breath. And that has the same effect. So they used to do this in the ancient times in karate, and a lot of yoga people do this as well, not understanding the complete science of it. And it's just until recently I've actually just discovered the science from the latest research. So 2 breaths in. The other thing with the double breath in is you breathe in, the extra breath where you suck that little bit extra in, what it does, it takes the oxygen into your lungs, expands your lungs, and you have the little sacs called the alveoli. And that extra breath just opens up those sacs a bit more to get more oxygen in, and that gives you more oxygen. And the long breath out breathes more carbon dioxide out, because the body is very responsive or reactive to carbon dioxide, not necessarily oxygen. So if my carbon dioxide levels in my blood is elevated because I can't get enough oxygen, I'm expending a lot of energy out, a lot of byproduct, then my heart rate goes up, my breathing rate goes up to get rid of the carbon dioxide. So if I increase my breath out, I'm dissipating carbon dioxide out of my body. And when the carbon dioxide comes down, then the heart rate comes down because I don't need as much oxygen, because the byproduct of carbon dioxide is an indicator of how much work is being produced and how much oxygen you need. So the less carbon dioxide, the less oxygen you need. The higher the carbon dioxide, the more oxygen you need, means your heart rate will go up, your breathing rate will go up. So these little typical training methods can de-stress you. Remember, double the breath out. Double it up even. And do a series of them. And that's what I do during a tournament during the day. Right? Because I'm not in the battle. I don't need to be fired up. I need to be calmed down. And some people do it through meditation and through breathing and yoga and all sorts of stuff. And that's very cool as well. On the other hand, if I want to fire myself up and get myself in an activated state, I want to release the epinephrine and adrenaline, I need to fire myself up, I do the opposite. I big breath in, smaller breath out. And you do that before tournament. I'll be there, and I go ready for battle. You see athletes do it before a sporting game. They'll get an oxygen in, they want the heart rate to go up, they want the oxygen supply to go out to the cells. So they big breath in, shorter breath out. And that's what you do to get fired up for a flight or a fight. If I really want to fire myself up, you see the powerlifters do this. They want to get their body into a full stress state, not so much to produce oxygen, but just to release adrenaline and epinephrine. And what they'll do, you watch them, they go, this, they fire themselves up, yeah, there's short breaths, in out, and that's that stressor response. So the body goes into a stress state which releases the action hormones such as adrenaline to fire itself up to go and do that powerlifting lift or the Olympic lift. I wouldn't recommend do that too long because I feel a bit lightheaded now, because that can be actually, if you overdo it, then you can have adverse effects. You can faint and all sorts of things and hurt yourself. But the powerlifters who do that, they take their smelling salts and they do that. And the reason why they do that is not that they need the oxygen, it's more they're firing up their stressor system, their stress system, by creating a stress to release epinephrine and adrenaline to pump everything up, get everything ready, fired up, ready for action. So there are some techniques you can use in the moment to fire yourself up if you're an athlete, but also to calm yourself down. What to do after the fight or after the stress. Or if you don't want to deal with the stress, you need to relieve yourself from the stress, even though the stress is going to be there, you just breathing. So there are some things you can do in the moment as that's actually happening, and the spot. Now, there are other things you can do, which, sometimes you have to deal with that. While someone's yelling at you, or there's a confrontation there, you have to be able to have that breathing technique. Now, you may not do it, you might do it subtly where they don't even notice it. And many times I've been in that situation where I've been in board meetings and I've been under fire, or I've been in confrontations in personal relationships or whatever it might be, and they're going off like a frog in a sock, and I'm cool, calm and collected. And that's one of the things that Rory will say about me, is I'm always cool, calm and collected. And I think it's something which I've just naturally conditioned myself, because I do know that panic is not a part of the problem. Panic is not a solution to the problem. So me panicking and going off my top is not going to work. So a couple of things to do. Use your breathing and don't open your mouth. Now, here's some research says if you breathe and use your nose, then that also relaxes your muscles in your face and your mandible and your jaw and your tongue, which in itself will probably prevent you from talking. Wag your tail more than your tongue, because if you're in a state of anger or frustration or stress and you start to talk, you're going to probably say something that you're going to regret. If you're angry, you're going to use angry words. If you're insecure, you're going to say insecure things, and you're going to regret them because they're on the spur of the moment. So I teach my students, or anyone who needs help, is if you're under fire, just breathe, pause, say nothing. Don't say anything until you're back to that homeostatic state, until you're back to that E state, not disease state. because if the words you use will probably get you into more trouble than the words that you don't. You can't get into trouble for what you don't say, but you can certainly get into trouble. And once you say it, it cannot be unsaid. If you say it on Facebook, I always say, if you got angry and you're writing an email or sending a letter or sending whatever it might be, or doing a Facebook post, hey, don't send it in the emotional state of stress or anger or jealousy or insecurity, what it might be. Just, you may want to type it out. That's great. That's good therapy. But don't press the send button. Don't send it, because once you send it, you cannot unsend it. And once it's said, you can't unsay it. People cannot unhear it. You now have that reputation if that goes out to the world. Sleep on it, come back to it the next day, and you go, okay, I'm glad I didn't send that. Because now I've got a bit more of a clear head, calm, cool, collected. I can see the big picture of things. So there's some little things that you can do to deal with it on the spot. Sometimes you don't have to deal with it. If you don't have to deal with it now, don't deal with it now if you're under a stressed state. If you have to deal with it now, then calm yourself down a bit and then deal with it. The other things you can do naturally is to break away a bit from it. Many times I use a tournament because the tournament represents any stressor state. I won't stay in the tournament facility. Sometimes I'll go out in the grass and just chill out and do a bit of breathing and just get a break from it. Get out of the cooking pot, get out of the toxic environment, get out of that stressor pot, and get out there and just, okay, then you're going to see it from a different angle. I know one of my friends, her sister, whenever she gets really angry, she used to get really fiery at a partner. And I was around their place for dinner one night, and her name is Sue, and partner said something, and you can see she just turned crimson red, and she's just ready to rip his head off. And she was in the middle of dinner, and she just got up and she went outside in the middle of the night. And I said, "Where's Sue gone?" He says, "Oh, she's gone for a walk around the block." I said, "What, in the middle of dinner?" He says, "Yep." He says that she does that. He says she knows when she gets fired up, she breaks away from what's firing up, which is her husband at the time, and she walks around the block. And she walks around the block, and about 20 minutes later, she walks back in and she's a bit calm again. And then she'll say, "So Mark, what were you saying?" in a calm, cool, collected way, because she just diffused herself. And what she did was really cool. She learnt that, she worked that out. Is she was all stressed up, or fired up, or oxygen up, macronutrient up, or energized up, and she went and burnt the energy off by walking around the block, coming back, and that way she didn't say something she's going to regret or do something like rip his head off. So sometimes you can have a break away from the situation and go and punch a punching bag, go for a run, go and do some weights, because that does is relief, or that physical preparation and activation. So that's why a lot of people, they find when they're really stressed, going through a divorce or going through a stressful part at work, then their saviour is their gym. I remember hearing about this guy who went to the doctor because he was feeling all depressed and stressed and all sorts of stuff, and his doctor gave him some antidepressants, and he says, and the doctor says you're clinically diagnosed with depression, and he didn't accept that because he didn't want to be put into that box. And I understand some people might be in that position. What he did, instead of going to the chemist to get the drugs, he went to the running store and bought some running shoes and went running, and has run every single day, and he's run something like 50-something marathons, and he's happy, healthy, fit, because now he found that source to relieve that stress from his work, outlet, and that's a physical outlet which has a good benefit because it actually gets you fit, healthy and strong, which we'll talk more about. So some of the things you can do in that you deal with that acute stress is have some levers or some outputs that you can use, whether it be, and physical outlooks are really good, outputs are really good because they relieve all the muscle tension, they bring your body back to a physical homeostatic position that gets you out of ease. And yes, you may want to work on mental exercise, whether that be meditation or yoga or whatever it might be, but it's also good to complement that with physical stuff. And sometimes it might be a good physical stuff that works the mind as well. I do martial arts, so when I'm doing my martial art patterns or katas or forms in different martial arts, they're physical but also require me to think a lot about what the next move is. It might be dancing, it might be a yoga exercises where there's certain things you have to do, so it gets the mind and the body working together to relieve that stress. And that's why exercise is one of the best tools that you can use to deal with that acute stress, have that release before you have to, I guess, attack the problem. Sometimes you have to attack it then and there, and it's important that you use those things to calm yourself down, get a clear head, get focused to see what you can see, not what you think you can see, so you can deal with it properly and respond to it, responsibility, rather than react to it, because you will regret what you do and what you say. However, if you respond to it with your ability, then you're going to come out of the other end with a positive outcome rather than a negative outcome, and healthier for it as well. So moving on how to deal with the acute short-term stress, which is using your breathing techniques. And if you look at someone who's stressed out, or they're sobbing, or they're crying, or whatever it might be, you see they use those breathing techniques naturally anyway, maybe not as controlled as they'd like, where they'll or they're sulking, or whatever it might be, they'll use those short breaths in, a little long breath out. But if you actually exaggerate that by breathing in and you force the longer breath out, that's going to have a better effect. So people do it naturally anyway when they're under fire, if they're crying or they're sobbing or whatever it might be, and you look at their breath and they're taking short breaths, longer breaths out. But if you expand them, that's going to have a greater calming effect. And you can use that proactively as a little lever to override or use that parasympathetic system to counter the sympathetic system that gets you into that stressful state. You can calm it down with that deliberate form of breathing techniques that affects the diaphragm. The other areas is obviously you go from acute to more medium to chronic long-term stress. So that might be over a matter of weeks. It might be during a month of exams. Where you have to deal, you might be 4 weeks leading into a sporting championship. It might be coming into the month before getting married, or it might be the month after getting divorced, whatever it might be. Now, these are more extended periods of time, and certainly when you're experiencing those acute episodes of stress, where the stressor is there, where someone's yelling on the phone, or you're upset that something hasn't happened the way it should be, or get that bill, then you can use those acute techniques immediately while you're in the trenches under fire. Outside that, it's also important that you manage your day-to-day activities to deal with that constant underlying pressure of running a business, running a family with 4 kids, 5 kids. That can be stressful, and that's where you really have to put into place tools and things in your life that's going to be able to keep you fit, healthy and strong, and be that warrior, not a worrier, always worrying about things. And that comes with your lifestyle choices, and sometimes you might do more and sometimes you do less. I know that if you're not very healthy, you're not going to be able to deal with stress very well. One of the things that's going to be very beneficial is to apply stress in the body to make you stronger and make your stress responses better over a period of time. So that includes making sure that you do your strength training, and you do your cardiovascular training, and you do you eat healthy, and you sleep well, and you have good recreation, and you have good hobbies in your life, and have different breaks. So make sure that if you're in the pot and you have to deal with it, then you're strong. When you're out of it, get strong, so when you have to deal with it, you can deal it with strength and courage, and with clear view, with responsibility, rather than just being a victim to it and reacting to it. So how to deal with medium-term type stresses. My big thing obviously is exercise. I feel exercise is one of the greatest ways to physiologically respond and make you stronger. We already know that exercise and stresses will build the body, build all the systems, the respiratory, the cardiovascular, the neural system, the endocrine system, the immune system. So if you build those systems, then they're going to respond better than if those systems were run down or out of shape or out of condition. So build your body by what you do when you're not under stress to prepare you for the stress, like training. When I have a fight coming up, the harder I train, the easier the fight is. The harder I train, the easier the fight is. I know Michael Jordan, the great basketballer, says make training like hell, so the game is like heaven. So when you're looking at longer term, ensure that you're building your body, building your mind all the time. That even rhymes, because I can't make rhymes all the times. So always be on top of it, being fit, healthy and strong, eating well, sleeping well, have a healthy approach to life. That way, when those times of medium-term stress or acute stress or short-term stress you're prepared for it. You know, because success comes when preparation meets opportunity. And sometimes a stress, some people see it as an inconvenience and other people see it as an opportunity. So if you change your mindset and say, this is an opportunity for me to become stronger, for me to be better, to me to handle bigger problems, because you can't handle the big problems unless you've had practice on the little problems. And some people, you can say you can determine how big someone is by the size of the things that upset them. So if you're upset by little things, it means you have little resistance or little adherence to stress or confrontation or challenges. So start practicing on the little things and be aware, be self-aware of how you're handling it. We call it third place. Third place means you're outside yourself, looking at yourself, and you're seeing how you're responding to it as you're actually doing it. Now, if you were your own performance, your high performance coach, what would you advise to you on how to handle that? But if you can do that in the amongst of it and say, well, how would a high performance performer deal with this? How would that champion deal with this? And I do that when I train. And how would a world champion deal with this? How would a world champion respond to this? So be that person you want to become to overcome it. And you've got a bit more time in the medium time because you're not in the moment. You can be a little bit on the outside and you can develop yourself and grow yourself so that when those opportunities come, other people called stress moments come, then you're taking advantage of it and you defeat it or you overcome it. And you become out the champion, you come out the victor, not the victim. So on a day-to-day basis, always make sure that you, on a week-to-week basis, that you have all those things in place. And sometimes there's going to be more stress, and don't give up those things. Don't give up those things. Just because you're under fire sitting for exams doesn't mean you stop exercising. Because if you go and exercise, or you go and read a different book, or you go and walk around the lake with your family and spend some family time, make sure you don't lose all those things, because that will make you more stressed, because now you're stressed because you're losing all these other things. But these other things will give you energy to deal with the big thing. If you get your energy not from sitting there doing nothing. A lot of people, when they get stressed, they go seek artificial ways. They get, they smoke dope, or they start drinking alcohol, or they start to do drugs, and that's just an escape. That's avoiding the challenge. That makes you weaker, not stronger. And they get little satisfactions, the release of dopamine from that. But the better way to get dopamine is to actually work and towards the stress, is overcome the stress. Because if you take action and finding that solution, every time you do an action and it overcomes that challenge or it leads you to your goal, that every time you do something proactive, you'll get a little release of dopamine, which is the achievement or the success hormone that you feel, wow, yes, I feel good about that. And make sure that you're getting that from finding the solution or achieving the achievement or achieving what you want to achieve, not getting it from distractive ways or destructive ways, such as spending time on Facebook and seeing how many likes you get. That will give you a dopamine hit, but really it doesn't really serve any purpose except for your own ego or your low self-esteem, or a dopamine hit from doing drugs or alcohol. Make sure you get your dopamine hits from being proactively overcoming a challenge, fighting the stress, fighting or flighting in a good way. And some stresses you flight from. Say, well, I don't need that in my life. Sometimes you can eliminate the stress. If there's an angry, toxic person in your life, then coax them out of your life and just move them out of your life. If you find that that's not serving your life and that's destructive to your life, then remove it out of your life. It is your life. So sometimes flight is appropriate. Flight means basically move those things out of your life that is causing you stress, and if there's no benefit. There's some stress, there's no benefit. But exercise in itself is a stress because it actually gets you fit and stronger. Saving money, investing is a stress because it produces your financial freedom. Working in a relationship can be a stress, but it produces obviously a family and love and connection and all sorts of things. So all those things are very important. So let's have a look at some of the things that in your life: exercise, good nutrition, recreation. Have those little breaks in your life that take you away. Now, I run a business. I've been in business for 32 years, and one of my outlets is my martial arts. Now, you may find that stressful. Yeah, it's a different type of stress, and it builds me from a character point of view that serves me well when I deal with business as well. So I love to go training. I love to train with purpose. I do martial arts. Your thing might be It might be fun runs, it might be marathons, it might be dancing, it might be recreation, it might be, you find those little recreational hobby things that give you a break from the pressure in that lane. Find those other lanes. And if you engage into that, your family, and you can engage your friends in connection, then that's a good thing as well. And that brings up another important area that a lot of research has been done on places or cultures in the world that live the longest with the less stress, with the less coronary heart disease and disease, is that personal connection or that family connection. So yes, it's important that you have all those things that de-stress you, such as exercise and good eating and sleeping and sport and recreation and hobbies and all of that. But also it's really that personal connection that's really, really important as found by the research. It means you make sure you spend time with your friends and your family, that the people that you love about, and your children, because when you actually spend time eating or socializing or going on adventures with the people that you love, that releases another hormone called your serotonin, and that's a hormone that makes you feel satisfied, it makes you feel content and happy. So that's a really, really important component. It's one of the human needs as well, is personal connection, is keeping that connection with the people that you love. And it doesn't always necessarily have to be people. It could also, as you know, I have a dog. I have lots of dogs. I've got 4 dogs. I've always had dogs all my life. I'm a dog lover. And I get the same feeling when I spend time with my dogs, or go out for a walk with them, or sit on the couch at the end of the day with them. That's one of the most enjoyable parts of my life, that little connection with my puppy dogs where we pat each other and all sorts of stuff. And I get that release of serotonin and I feel, oh, how good is this? So make sure that you connect with the people that you love, or the animals that you love, on a regular basis. We do know that people, from research as well, is when people start retire, the people who have animals or dogs, they seem to live longer because they get that connection and that release of serotonin, of satisfaction, of fulfillment, and of feeling content and happy. So make sure that when you are going through stressful times, you don't neglect all these things. A lot of people, when they go through stressful times, exams or whatever it might be, or relationships or career, they get rid of the exercise, they stop eating healthy, they don't spend time with their friends. If anything, they attack their friends or their family and just leave me alone. They stay so in that lane. But it's really important that you spend time in those other lanes, even when you have to focus on this lane. Even though the stress is there, you have to deal with that relationship challenge, you have to deal with the exams, you have to deal with that business. But make sure that you use the other things in your life to energize you to really be your best in that lane. Because a lot of people, what they use, they will compromise all that, they stay in that lane and they actually burn themselves out. And if you don't deal with the stress, one of the best ways to release stress is actually deal with the stress and overcome the stress. But it's really important that as you're dealing with it, that you look after yourself, or you're not actually burning yourself out. It's quite interesting that if you stay in that chronic stress state for a long periods of time, where you're dealing, at the end of those 4 weeks exams, or the end of that hard yards before your holiday, when you go on your holiday, you get sick, because in that time what you've done is you've compromised your immune system and your health, and you've gone from ease to disease, and the cracks are opening up, the high blood pressure, the coronary heart disease, you start getting skin rashes, and you start getting all sorts of things, and cracks in the lips, and the armour starts to chip away. The best way to mend that armour and regenerate that armour is make sure that you don't neglect those other areas in your life, your physical, your social and family, your mental, your recreation, the things that bring joy to your life. Stop doing things that make you unhappy and do more things that make you happy. So when you're dealing with this, don't neglect all the things that make you. May spend less time in it because you have to allocate more time to overcome this pressing moment at the time, but make sure that you don't just flush all that away, and before you know it, you've overcome that, you've lost all that, and you're sick at the end, full of disease. Because as we know, if you're not at ease, you become disease. So there's some great things that you can do. Another thing you can do is to get out of that hot pot, get out of the frying pan, and go and do things. And these other things, which is physical things or social things. But when you're in a stress mode, you go into focus. When your stress response, you get ready, you go into this lane, you really focus, and you tend to lose sight of what's going on there. If I'm in the fight, so I'm fighting, I'm not thinking about anything else, I'm just focused here, and I tend to miss everything else. And because I'm processing things so quickly, what's seeing in front of me is going slowly. So you can become impatient. That's like when you're late to catch a plane and you're stuck in the traffic and the light's red and you're waiting, you're tapping your hand and you're doing this and your body's getting ready. It's all stressed over a red light because you're going to be late for a meeting or late for a flight. Everything seems to go slow, and the reason why it's going slow, it's not actually going slow, it's going the same speed. But the reason why it's going slow is because your mind's going so fast. You're processing things so quickly that everything seems slow. To everyone else in the world, it might be going fast, depending on what mind frame they're in. But in your mindset, and that's a part of it, you go into that focus. And sometimes you've got to slow things up. If you stay in the fast lane, you eventually crash in the fast lane. One of the things when I was really young, when I was a bit of a wild child, I used to go out with my mates. Joe was the driver, he was 17 years of age, I was about 14. I went out with Robert and another guy, I can't quite, Angelo his name was, and I remember one night we went out and did silly things. We bought some eggs, we were throwing eggs at people and then driving away. And what happened is someone came after us and we drove away and we ended up being in an accident. I was doing one of those little tiny four-wheel drives and we went around a corner and we hit the curb and the four-wheel drive tumbled four times. Now I was in the back, no seat belts, no padding, anything. But what I always remember, when the four-wheel drive was rolling, obviously I'm in a massive stress state. It's a life and death stress state. I wasn't necessarily freaking out, which is really weird, but what I noticed is everything went slow motion. And I remember saying out loud, "Oh no, here we go again." And it would roll, and then I go, "Oh no, here we go again." And it's almost like I was laughing through the process of this car rolling. The reason why it went in slow motion is because my mind, when stress was going so fast and so focused, that everything else around me went slow because I was processing it so quickly. So sometimes it's important when you're in that zone, you've got to get out of it. So in life, at the office, you're in front of the computer screen, you're in front of your phone doing this, you're focusing on the meeting like this, have a break. Get out there and what we call get the panoramic view, get the overall view. It means go outside, and I happen to live in the beautiful South Island, New Zealand, in Queenstown. I'm surrounded by beautiful mountains. So when I take my dogs for a walk, I enjoy just looking at the mountains. And when I look at the mountains, I'm not focused on anything. My mind does this. So all of a sudden it just, there's no threat, there's no stressor, because it's like the hunter walking to the hunting grounds. He doesn't have to hunt yet. So as he's walking there, he's looking at the valley and he's looking at the sky, he's looking at the mountains, he's looking at the ocean, and he's relaxed. He's got his little spear and he's relaxing on the way. And then when he gets to the hunting grounds, he sees the gazelle, then he goes to focus. A lot of people, their whole life is on the focus. What's important is to enjoy the journey. And enjoy the journey, sometimes you want to get out and about, get some sunshine, get some sun on the face. That's really important, at least 15 minutes a day. Walk outside, take the dogs, take the kids bike riding out there. Look at the mountains. At night time I go out and look at the beautiful stars down here in the South Island of New Zealand. I go out there and I just stand there and go, oh my God, isn't this amazing? Because it tends to put everything into perspective. It makes you realise how you're making such a major out of a minor, because that minor is irrelevant anyway, in the big picture of things. So to put things into perspective, get out there and see the big picture, and they'll put your little things into place, and they may not be as big as you really think they are. So getting out and about, and if you can multitask that with going out with your family and going out with your dogs, or my neighbour here, he loves bike riding. He's the second best cross-country bike rider in New Zealand. So he goes out after work and he goes up in the mountains, and obviously he gets the view and he gets the excitement, he gets the exercise. So that type of activity is really good. He has to be very specific and he has to develop his skill, and it gives him probably a good break from his mundane job that he has at work. Because sometimes the big stress or chronic stress could be having a job that you don't love, not having a purpose. I think having a purpose is a really important thing, because if you have a purpose, then everything has meaning. You're working towards something, when you achieve something, it's meaningful, so that releases a little a little injection of dopamine. Because a lot of people will, when they have nothing, then they start to look for those little highs in life. So they look for alcohol, or they look for drugs, or they look for doing silly things, or getting on Facebook and saying silly things, because every time they do something, that gives them a release of dopamine that makes them feel, hey, I've done something. That's a sense of achievement that feels fantastic, but it's the wrong fantastic because it's attached to the wrong thing. If you're working towards overcoming your challenge or your stress, and you're working towards it, chipping away at it, then every time you do that, then you're going to get a hit of dopamine. dopamine. If you freeze and do nothing or flight, then that doesn't happen. It doesn't feed your energy. It doesn't feed you to overcome it. So don't attach your satisfaction over out of eating a whole elephant. Attach it to the little bites along the way. Inch by inch, life's a cinch, as long as it's going in the right direction. Yard by yard becomes very hard. It's not where you are, it's where you're going that counts. But as long as you're going in the right direction, and you're going to get those little hits of dopamine, that's going to make you feel fantastic. But if you're spending a good chunk of your life in a job that has no meaning to you, and it's just a job to pay your lousy rotten bills, there's more to life than just having a job to pay your lousy rotten bills. There's more to life than paying off your mortgage. Life is there to be enjoyed with purpose that satisfies you, that fulfills you according to your values. So if you're in a job where you're doing what you don't want to do, for whom you don't want to do it, where you don't want to do it, then that's going to put a bit of stress in your life, subtle stress, but it's going to weigh you down over a period of time. Now, if you're in that position, then make sure when you do have your own time, you do things that energize you, to relieve that stress, that serves a purpose, that fulfills you. But ultimately, over time, you want to eventually transition yourself out of that job that you hate or you don't like or is nothing, and doing something that makes you happy, that fulfills you, that serves a purpose. Because the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. So there's some stresses I see a lot of people who compromise their health and they have a career that they don't like. They're two big parts of your life, and that in turn then will affect your relationship, which is the third big part, and then you don't earn any money out of it because you're not the best you can be. So the four big quadrants of your life, which is your relationships and family, your career and your business, your health and your wealth. And if those four aren't all growing, then it's going to start to fall apart. You're going to get stressed and you don't really know what to do. But keep working on those little things. Then you're going to eventually build a big thing and you become a big person. One of the other things that it's important to do is to build your threshold of stress. So if I want to build muscle, then I'll go down to the gym and lift weight. But to get strong, I have to lift the weight. I've got to push the body on, push myself. If I want to get fitter, I have to push myself, get my heart rate up. And I need to get up to at least 80% of maximum heart rate or 80% of 1RM or MVC, maximum voluntary contraction in the gym. I need to overload, progressive overload. When I get adapted to that load, I increase the load to get stronger and stronger. And you can do the same thing to build your adherence and build your threshold against stress. And it doesn't necessarily have to be directly in line with what you want to build. You can build other areas of your life that will build your character and build your threshold to deal with any stress that comes down your path. And one way to do that is go to the gym and doing high intensity interval training, getting your heart rate up. Because if you get an unfit person who's not conditioned to get the heart rate right up, and they get up there, they're going to be freaking out and fainting out and feeling sick and all sorts of stuff. They're not going to be used to it. But if you gradually build that up, eventually you're going to get your heart rate up to a high level and you're going to feel comfortable there. Like an elite athlete, they're comfortable when their heart rate is 90% of maximal heart rate. Someone who's unfit is not going to be comfortable. But when you're comfortable in that stress zone of the high pressure, because exercise is a stress, it has the same physiological response as any stress, but you're self-inducing it, you're putting onto you in a controlled manner to build your fitness and build your threshold and build your character. And if you can do that and go to the gym and lift strong, heavy weights, and you go there and increase your heart rate and do things that no one else wants to do, that also builds up your threshold. Do the jobs that no one wants to do at work. And the boss says, who wants to be this? I'll do that, because it's not what it is. It's not what it's going to make of me. And the harder it is, the more it's going to make me hard, mentally and physically. So look for opportunities to grow, because everything you do is either building your character or deteriorating your character. So look for the things that build your character, the things that are meaningful, that put a pressure on you. Because I was shared once that, do something every day that scares the shit out of you. Because then if you do that, you're going to live a big life. Because a big life is someone who starts with doing little things and before they build up to big things and big things. But if you can't handle little things, you're not going to be prepared for the big things. So start doing things that builds up your character and builds up your resilience and builds up your strength and builds up your threshold to stress by doing things in your life, whether it be finances or fitness or chores or business. And then when that big stress does come along that you didn't expect it, then you are prepared for it. You're there, okay, I know how to handle this, or you're big enough to walk away from it and say, hey, don't worry about it. And then look at your mental approach to any stressor that comes in your life. There's two types of stresses. One's that you have control over and ones that you have no control over. I don't have control over the weather. I don't have control over someone else's emotions. I don't have control over someone who gets angry. I don't have control over, some of the things the government does. I don't have control over some world events. So I'm not going to get stressed about it. I'm not going to get stressed what's happening in another country, or not stressed what's happening in someone else's life, or stress in someone else's opinion, because I don't have control of that. I just have control of myself. And the only thing you really have control over is your thoughts that will trigger your emotions. So if you can't control it, then just let it go. Don't worry about it. However, if you can control it and it's important to you, then you have to take action on it. So if you can have any control over it, then find the solution to it, overcome it. You're going to feel bigger and better after it by chipping away at it, and eventually finding the solutions and educating yourself and developing your knowledge and your skills and your techniques, and then you're going to come out better for the next big challenge. And you can always tell someone how big someone is by the size of the things that bother them. So if you find someone gets really upset about little things, then obviously they're little-minded. You have to be bigger than that. The only things that will get to you that are big things. And if they are big things, then you're big enough to, hey, I'm going to conquer this. I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to find the solution to it. If I don't know what the solution is, I'm going to find it. And then once I know the solution, then I'm better for it as well. And when you do approach any challenge, whether it be a financial challenge, a relationship challenge, a school challenge, a business challenge, or whatever challenge, you have to overcome it, then the good way to approach it is this. This is how I approach things. Okay, do I have control of it? Yes, I do. I can do something about it. So before I start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all the facts. Not the hearsay, not the reputation. I'm going to get all the true facts, because sometimes what you think it is not really what it is. What I have learned is most things are not as hard as you think they are, and most things aren't as easy as you think they are. Gather the facts so you really know what you're dealing with. And when you get the facts, then you say, okay, what is the worst case scenario? What is the worst case scenario can happen here? Can it be end in divorce? Can I go broke? Can I lose that opportunity? Can I lose my job? What is the worst? Can I lose the game? Can I lose the premiership? What is the worst case scenario? And once you develop the worst case scenario, it says, is it really that bad? Am I dying? Am I going to die? Or is it really that bad? And then once you develop the worst case scenario, just accept the worst. Because once you accept the worst, you don't fear the worst. You tend to, if you don't fear the worst, you tend to go into it with an open mind, with a proactive way. But if you fear it, then you're going to go into a negative mindset. You're going to go more stressed and less clear. And then you're going to you tend to never overcome the things you fear. Once you accept it, then you don't fear it. Then you can proactively then ask yourself, okay, that's the worst. I accept the worst. Now I'm going to go in that with open mind, open eyes. Now, how can I improve on the worst? And how can I improve myself to become a better person to overcome that? And if I do overcome this, what type of person is it going to make? What is it going to make of me? It's not who I am, it's what is making of me that's most important. So these stresses in life, they're good things if you go in with the right mental attitude. They're good things if you go in and say, hey, this is my resistance training to build my character. I go to the gym to resistance train to build my muscles. I get on the treadmill as a resistance training to build my lungs. I go and do special things for my family and my kids. That's a good resistance training to build my relationships and my personal connections. And I do resistance training, I do all these skill training to develop my sport. And if any problem comes into my life, unforeseen, then this is good resistance training to test my character and test, because success comes when preparation meets opportunity. So every day, if you just live a day which is the same as the previous day, we call that the Groundhog Day. There's a movie called Groundhog where every day is the same, because you're not really growing, you're not really doing anything. And remember, growth is one of those human needs, and once you grow and you achieve things, then that makes you feel significant, which is also one of the human needs as well. And you do that with friends and family, then that brings in the personal connection. And then you also, if you do that, you become great at it. And then that brings in the certainty, because you're certain and confident in yourself. And then you seek new adventures and new challenges. And that brings in the uncertainty, the excitement to get better at things. And then all of those things are going to serve the human needs. And then no matter what comes down your path, you're going to be ready for it. You're going to be confident, because you're going to be the warrior, not the worrier. Because you're going to turn your stress into success, and you're going to be cool, calm, and collected about it as well.